FM News Talk 97.1. On-demand audio.
Joining me on the phone right now is Missouri State Senator Brad Lager. He is running in the Missouri Republican primary for lieutenant governor. And, Senator, I want to welcome you onto the show. And I want to make sure I get your name. Is it Lager or Lager?
It's Lager.
Lager. Thank you. Because Kevin and I were like, I think it's Lager. You were saying you thought it was Lager.
I thought it was like the beer.
Okay, there you go. He was right. Well, Senator Lager, I appreciate you joining me this afternoon. Now, you are running, as I just said, for Lieutenant Governor Missouri Republican primary. Obviously, you would rather work under a governor like Dave Spencer, Bill Randall's, but I'm curious as to what a Lieutenant Governor Lager term would look like under, say, if Nixon wins and he's still governor.
You know, I'm a person who just believes deeply in the private sector. I mean, Dana, I got involved in public policy for one simple reason. I actually believe that the private sector will always do a better job of meeting the needs of society than big government programs. So for me, the answers to our societal problems is not have government fix it. For me, it's find private sector opportunities. So I'm going to be the guy who's always going to be talking about how do you empower people, how do you empower the private sector to meet these challenges, not government programs.
Right. And that's something that we've seen, especially Governor Jay Nixon, be very supportive of. And when it comes down to, for instance, like, the fight over Obamacare and the health exchanges and everything else, I know there's a fight right now over the ballot language. That's something that we've seen Nixon kind of really lean Missouri constituents towards, is these big government solutions. So you would be a thorn in his side, basically, is what you're saying.
Well, here's the challenge, and here's the problem we've had with Governor Nixon, and that is there's not been a single initiative, whether it was a directive from the EPA, whether it was Obamacare, whether it was these overreaching federal regulations that continue to be manufactured in Washington, that he's pushed back on. And the reality is as we all know, no one individual or even one business can fight the federal government.
Right.
But you know what? Some states together and states who are willing to be bold can definitely fight back.
In terms of being bold, obviously I'm sure you watched everything unfold in Wisconsin with Scott Walker and Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Clayfish, and how it was that bold leadership which took the Wisconsin economy back from the brink. I mean, they were being absolutely bankrupted by public sector costs, and they reformed. Now they have they're on track for $150 million surplus. One of the things that, obviously that they did was to give their employees, public sector employees, the free choice as to whether or not they wanted to join a union. Is right to work something you would push for as a lieutenant governor here in Missouri?
It is. I tell you what, as I travel the state, that is one of the things that I hear the most of, Dana. And the reality is that the reason that I believe that we should be a right to work state is every site selection person that I have met with, that talked to, that came and testified at the Capitol, the reality is what they say is anywhere between 25 and 50% of the companies who start looking to expand into other states, that is one of their requirements. Now, no business in this world would go into an industry and say, I'm only going to serve 50% of it, or I'm only going to serve 75% of what I could. We need to put all the options on the table, because I believe it's about creating the greatest number of economic opportunities for the greatest number of people.
Right. And you talk about the private sector. You're obviously in the private sector. You're from what I've read about you, you're a small business owner. You work also a technology firm or technology corporation, yes. Cerner. In terms of small business, like, give me a little bit about your back, because I know what I've read the cut and dry, but I'd like to hear it from the people that I talk to themselves.
You bet. When I graduated from college, Dana, I had a great opportunity. It was to build a small wireless phone company up in the northwest corner of the state. And at the time, we had 2 employees. We had a few hundred customers. Now we have tens of thousands of customers. We have a little over 30 employees. And what I learned in that process was 2 things. One is government can definitely be an obstacle to growth. It can be an obstacle to progress. And it's not just about taxes. It's also about the regulatory environment. And that's where government gets us all too often. And so for me, building the wireless company and living through the regulatory environments that really started to grow in the late 90s, early 2000s, that's actually how I originally got involved in public policy. I mean, I come from a family not at all involved in politics. We're just business owners who get up every day and work hard. My dad and I own a car wash together. We have a small cow-calf operation, just entrepreneurial at heart. And I'm a guy who believes I just truly believe that the private sector and the greatness of this country is not because of government. It's in spite of government.
Right. Now, what do you do at Cerner? Now, Cerner, for those who may be unaware, because we have a lot of people who listen outside of St. Louis, too, Cerner is, from what I understand, it's like a digital records corporate, like it's like a software company, but like they deal with like digital records and things like that.
Cerner is a healthcare technology company, and what they originally built were information systems, i.e. computer systems for hospitals. The next generation is how do you take the information that is being digitized across healthcare, and how do you deliver that to individuals so that people control their own information, so that you have more engaged and more informed consumers, so they can make better decisions on their own about their own healthcare choices.
Right.
And that's part of what's so frustrating about healthcare. It's part of what is just, I think, over the top about Obamacare. What government is trying to do is take decisions and that authority away from people and give it to government.
Right.
What I do at Cerner is that we are a private company using innovative solutions in the private sector to drive down the cost of healthcare, because you're allowing individuals to make the decisions that's best for them.
Right. There are some, and I did some before I had you on the show. I was looking around just to see what some individuals had been saying, and I know that some have accused you basically of being a lobbyist for Cerner while you were being a state senator. What do you say to individuals who make those accusations?
That's absolutely not true. I've never lobbied for Cerner in any function. I'm a guy who's always been part of the next generation of how do you empower consumers by giving them more data?
Right, right. And on Cerner's website, too, they have, on the About Cerner, they talk about, like healthcare and technology, and they also talk about the stimulus, specifically the provision which dealt with, the electronic health record systems and so on and so forth. And I know that Cerner, the CEO of your company, Neil Patterson, he was on the cover of Forbes listed as an Obamacare billionaire because Cerner had received a lot of money from the stimulus to help get prepared for when Obamacare came in. How do you reconcile the conflict? Because Cerner is a big donor to your campaign, was in 2008. How do you reconcile the conflict between Cerner receiving what amounts to a federal bailout from the stimulus, to saying that government can be an obstacle to growth when Cerner really benefited from it and your campaign benefited from Cerner support? Well,
both Neil and Jean Patterson, his wife, are dear friends of ours, and they have been very supportive of me. But I will tell you, Dana, I believe I am a better public servant because I understand what healthcare can look like. I understand where we can go a completely different direction than the way that it operates today. I actually believe there's a process in place. If we could get government out of the way of healthcare and empower individuals, where you can actually let the private sector take back over, and as people make their own decisions, it gets better and it gets cheaper. With all of that said, the reality is you're right. Cerner is a company that has benefited because their clients have benefited from it. So, but it's always a competitive environment. I mean, Cerner's clients have benefited. Cerner creates innovative solutions to help their clients solve problems, and that's helped them grow. As you said, Neil was on the cover of Forbes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I will tell you this. I am proud to be associated with a company that employs over 10,000 people, a company that has a bold vision of systemically changing the way healthcare operates in this country. And I can tell you this, after spending time with Neil Patterson, there is no one that would ever believe that Neil Patterson believes in bigger government, or that Neil Patterson believes that government control of healthcare is the answer. This guy is as true an entrepreneur and private sector person as I've ever been around.
I don't mean to interrupt you either, but do you know? I mean, it does give, especially when you look at all of the different states filing suits against Obamacare. It does cause a question, at least in my perspective, to voters. They would be wondering, to whom are you loyal? The biggest, because Cerner in 2008, from just from open secrets, I mean, you were the biggest beneficiary of their campaign donations in the country. I think voters, I guess what I'm asking is, voters would look at your campaign going for LG and wonder, to whom are you loyal, especially when you have states who are trying to fight to opt out of Obamacare, and then on the website of your biggest donor, they're celebrating Obamacare and talking about how great it is.
Let me be very clear so there's no confusion here. I work for the taxpayers as an elected official, and that is always who I will always put their best interest first. I never go get permission from anyone to go do what I think is right for the taxpayers. I'm always going to act on their behalf, and I want to be very very clear about this. I am the one person in this state who has called for a special session for Missouri to opt out of Obamacare, not some silly lawsuit to decide how to implement it, to get Missouri out, because I believe, Dana, just as these bold governors believe, you can't afford it, and we can't afford the taxes that come with it. This thing is, if Obamacare is implemented in Missouri, it will be the largest job-killing tax increase in our history, and that is why I called for a special session to run concurrent with veto session to minimize cost, to opt Missouri out now.
Well, that's good to hear, and I hope so, because sometimes, I look at this. I think it's the 10th Amendment, especially if we don't get a 60. Well, I think it's 51 seat majority is what we need now because of how it was passed in the Senate. I think it's going to come down to the 10th Amendment in the states' rights battle. And so that's why it's one of the reasons I'm really looking at the governor's races and the lieutenant governor's races. But I appreciate you coming on the show and answering the questions and giving us a little insight. I do.
I think it's so important that everyone understand. I fundamentally, philosophically believe in the private sector. And I believe that if we allow Obamacare to go forward, not only is it the most intrusive government reach of our lifetime, but it has the potential to be an economic disaster in that it is going to keep our country from being able to grow from an economics perspective.
Would you return Cerner's money because of the conflict, or?
I don't believe Cerner, the company, has actually donated to me this cycle.
I know in 2008 they did, and I'm all for individual donations.
Sure.
I know Neil Patterson's wife did as well this cycle, $100,000.
Yeah. Neil and Jean are good personal friends, and I'm very comfortable accepting their support because I know and I have articulated to them that I'm a person who always works for the taxpayer, and I have been very open and honest about. I believe Obamacare is bad and needs to go.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Senator Lager, and I know we'll be talking to you again soon. Thank you. I do appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care.
Get more Dana Show at 971talk.com.